Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of VR Download, where we talk about all things virtual reality. Well, not all things. This is our hardware and industry news episode for the week. And then later in the week, we do a games and what are we playing episode. So, welcome to all of you out there in live YouTube land in the chat. Just a reminder that we can see your live comments, so feel free to make all sorts of wonderful comments, and we'll discuss them as we go through the show. And my name is Kyle. I'm the host today, and with me, as always, it seems like.
Hello, everyone. Ian Hamilton here. Thank you for joining us. Demonstrate the hand tracking. All my favorite hand signals here. Live long and prosper, peace, and love. Yeah, I love it.
Awesome. Very cool. I love it. Yes. All right. Well, we've got a lot to talk about in this episode, and I'm pretty stoked to hear some of Ian's hot takes on some of this. So let's get right into the first piece of news. First thing today, Oculus Quest 2 gets PC VR AirLink, 120 hertz tracking, and desktop support. Facebook's latest update to the Oculus Quest software will add an AirLink mode to play PC VR games wirelessly alongside other major new features. Is this the update we've all been waiting for, Ian? I mean,
we're literally waiting for it. I don't know who out there has it. Yeah, I'm keep checking my Quest every day to see if it's got the update, and it's not. And it's obviously it's such a big update that we kind of need to have it on our Quests before we really impart to our readers and our viewers out there how to actually do all this stuff. And I look on the YouTube related videos, and it's just an endless stream of people talking about all the things you can do with this software that they probably don't have on their Quests yet, even the people making the videos. So as soon as we actually get this software on our Quest, we'll actually be able to run through what you can do and how it compares, virtual desktop versus AirLink, and how those different things stack up, because we obviously had a pretty significant quote there from Guy Godin in our story about this, where this is obviously a very similar feature to virtual desktop, but virtual desktop is going to do some things that AirLink isn't out of the box, and I know Guy is planning a lot of updates for virtual desktop over time. But it's still going to be a pretty big hit to his efforts. That it's going to stop a lot of people from buying it if they can do a lot of these things out of the box, which obviously is great for the consumers at home who can do this stuff now out of the box that they couldn't before.
Yeah, the comparison between AirLink and virtual desktop, there's been a lot of conversation online that I have seen about it, and I think that there are draws to both options in terms of what possibilities, what options and features there are. So I'll be curious to see what a thorough examination of those two products next to each other, what kind of results we end up with. I'll be very curious to see that down the road. Yeah.
And then there's obviously the desk and the virtual office. I mean, the one I'm really excited about is I already have I think it's K830 or 380. I can never remember which number it is. But the Logitech keyboard that has the trackpad on the right side, keyboard over here, that's now trackable by the Oculus headset. And so you lay it down on a table, you walk over to it, grab it, it sees where it is, and you can basically have it follow around with you and type on your keyboard and see the keys through your headset. And have a real office experience. And that's, as soon as I get that on my headset, I'm going to try writing a couple stories. I've already done that numerous times, written a couple stories from VR, but it's always a huge, huge chore. And the last time I did it, the keyboard was really I was able to hook up that keyboard to the headset, but not being able to know where it is was the thing that kind of made that a terrible experience. So waiting for that to get fixed.
Yeah, having a keyboard within the Oculus ecosystem is pretty special, really. I mean, there's been numerous times where I've tried to do searching and tried to do some web type of VR experiences, and unfortunately, the whole hunting and pecking through, because it's not like you can just stick your fingers on a virtual keyboard out here and it's going to be accurate. It's unfortunate that that input is still hard. I don't know. Oh no, we lost Ian. That's all right. Well, I'll keep you all. He's reconnecting now. I'll keep you all occupied. So, PCVR games, being able to play those on your Quest 2 is pretty important, considering it's got the oomph necessary to do the PCVR stuff. You just have to have a way to properly connect it. And sometimes that wire it feels like you're taking a step backwards in time when you do go to a wired PCVR situation. So the idea of having the wireless is obviously a big draw, and it kind of pushes us forward into that new generation of VR. We don't want to still be tethered to anything. The other things that the 120 hertz, Ian, I'm kind of curious about that, because when that first was announced, I remember internally we said, "Oh, wait. Are there any titles that actually do have 120 hertz?" And then slowly they've been rolling out. What do you know about all that?
There's the 2 table tennis games, Racket Fury and 11 have it, and then there's Cubism, which obviously isn't a very intense game. Like, there's not a lot going on visually with that game. It's just a handful of blocks in front of you that you have to position. So that's going to be the type of games. I'm actually kind of surprised that the 2 table tennis games were able to do it, because I guess maybe they're not graphically crazy, but they're physics crazy. Like, they've really got to have amazing physics in there. And so maybe that's just they're able to utilize the processing power just right to have the physics focused on one thing and the graphics aren't.
From a development perspective, most of that game is static. So really the only thing that's moving is the ball and you with your paddle. There's 11 and there's Racket Fury. I know you are a big ping pong fan, Ian, as am I. We have not had that experience yet of me and you playing against each other, but I think 120 hertz finally can keep up with me. So we might have to have a little challenge there and showcase that live for everyone.
I'm really curious how it affects the feel of a game at that intensity, because the makers of 11, I've talked to them, and in particular, they call out table tennis as perhaps like the pinnacle of stressing tracking quality. Like, if you want to check that your tracking quality is top notch, the speed in a paddle hit is just off the charts, and being able to hold the ball here, toss it up, come under it, all the spin that's in there, the subtle little spin, in addition to just smashing the ball from starting over your head and bringing it down. There's just so many little use cases there in such a short little space. That's like, if you really want to test tracking, that's how you do it.
Yeah. So we'll definitely stay tuned, everyone, for the day when Ian and I have our table tennis tournament. Yeah, it's gonna be good. You need to watch that. Okay, so yeah, version 28 rolling out sometime soon to some headsets someday. Maybe we'll get it, and then we can go in and turn on all the beta stuff. You got to turn it all on. So I don't know, Ian. I know you're very excited to jump into our next topic. Are you ready?
Are you ready? One. I've been listening to Andrew Bosworth and Id Carmack, John Carmack, Id Carmack on Twitter nonstop, and there was so many juicy things from that.
All right, well then let's do it. Here it is, the next news piece for today. Facebook, no Oculus Quest Pro in 2021. That's a no. Focus is on Quest 2. Facebook will not release an Oculus Quest Pro 2021 or in 2021, and Quest 2 is expected to be in market for a long while, according to the company's head of virtual reality. And I have a feeling you're going to be hearing Ian's voice for quite a long time, so go ahead, Ian.
All right, I'm using Heaney's newest abilities where I can cast images up here. So we've got a very important quote here from Andrew Bosworth, the head of VR over at Facebook. And the quote is, for those of our audio-only listeners, is, "I expect the incentives to be for developers to support Quest 1, absolutely." And to your point, that's him speaking to John Carmack. And to your point, let's find it. "We don't think it's too expensive to do that. And you are unlocking, 7 figures of additional users who could potentially buy your software, which is a pretty good deal when you can get it." So the formal answer, this is the context of all this is, should you develop for both Quest 2 and Quest 1, or just focus on one? All right, so the formal answer is that we may eventually allow developers who have really high-end apps to target Quest 2 alone, but our very strong recommendation is to support both, and that's actually what we expect to have happen based on historical norms. But Quest 1, you're unlocking 7 figures of additional users. We can now pretty confidently say that the market for Quest 1 was north of a million headsets out there. Somewhere below 10 million. That's obviously a big gap there between 1 million and 10 million. But for the first time ever, I think, out of Facebook, we have a significant statement there on the size of the market for the original Quest. Now, of course, you put that in context of how Quest 2 is doing, where they are saying that Quest 2 is outselling all other headsets, including Quest 1 combined. Then you start getting the sense of just, you're talking multi-millions of Quest headsets out there, and now we're on the path to 5 and 10 million. That's where we're waiting for the next big thing, is when Facebook basically comes out and tells us that they've got that many out in the market. And I think we're on that path here. Let's see what we've got on the comments here, if there's anyone. Yeah, wait, there's still 1 million Quests. All right, so to be clear here, he's saying, oh yeah, so I think he's saying that you could potentially reach at least 1 million Quest owners if you are a developer and make your software for the original Quest. That's a pretty big one. And elsewhere in this conversation, so what happened was last Friday, Bosworth and Carmack basically held an AMA on Twitter. They solicited questions from Twitter users, and then basically had a Spaces conversation. And the brutal thing out there for our readers who love listening to John Carmack speak is there's no archive. The Twitter Spaces platform doesn't save the conversation yet for you easily to go back and listen to. But luckily, I did have my phone recording the entire conversation. I missed a few minutes of it because I kept saving my recording to make sure it actually saved correctly. I didn't want to lose all 40 minutes or whatever. So there's a few minutes there in the middle missing. But another portion of this conversation, I love it where Carmack says something to the effect of, we're so close to mainstream that we don't have to obfuscate the numbers anymore. And he's literally coming out here and saying, yeah, I know in the past we've kind of been hand wavy on how the numbers for VR have been going. And now we're at such a point where we're actually getting confident in these numbers. Pretty big. That's the first one.
I wonder sometimes, support for Quest 1. Are we going to start to see the Quest 1 sort of kind of like backing up into the shadows like the Rift S? And
it's not the same. It's gonna get there eventually, but it's a situation here where it's the same operating system underneath. It's still based on Android, and what they're coming out and saying in this quote, the rest of the quote, is that officially you're still doing yourself a service as a developer to try to reach 1 million plus people on those original Quests. Keep in mind, they just recently brought the Quests back for $200 a pop. You could go and get a refurbished original Quest. So it's not just eating away at those numbers. The Rift S is dead, right? It's slowly leaving store shelves. You won't. It's already gone from store shelves, but you will not be. It's getting harder and harder to get week after week. But that thing hasn't been added to in years. It basically, the moment it got out there, they maybe updated it a couple times, and then it's not getting updated. With Quest 2, we do still get some vague language from them on whether features are going to make it to Quest 2, or sorry, to the original Quest. They're coming to Quest 2 first, but they're still going to try. It's in this conversation with them. They're still going to try wherever they can to bring whatever they do on Quest 2 to the original Quest. What I really wonder if they'll do is somewhere down the line here, or pretty soon, is really try to take those original quests off of people's hands and maybe give them a discount on a Quest 2 if they go and turn in their Quest 1s, because I do think the other quote here in what they've said that's so significant is that Quest 2 is going to be in the market for a long, long time. So here's the quote that you should all pay attention to here. Let's see. All right. Andrew Bosworth, the full quote is, "People are also asking about the Quest 3, which doesn't exist yet. And everyone who is listening to us who is a reporter, there isn't a Quest 3. There's only a Quest 2. I love that he specifically addressed us and the other reporters out there. Now we never we can't blame us. We didn't do anything wrong. What he did was, in an AMA on Instagram earlier this year, someone asks a question about Quest 3 and he specifically responds, "Oh, a Quest Pro? You're asking about a Quest Pro?" And he winks at the camera. So he names a product that doesn't exist yet. And everyone else is out there assuming there's a Quest 3. So there's headlines out there saying, Quest 3, when does it arrive? How much is it going to cost? And there's nothing. It's just complete conjecture. But here's Andrew Bosworth out there basically hinting that they're very, very, very serious about wanting to do a Quest Pro, which is probably, we'll get into that in a second about what those features of the Quest 3 might have. All right, but the rest of those Andrew Bosworth quote. People are also asking about the Quest 3, which doesn't exist yet. And everyone who is listening to us who is a reporter, there isn't a Quest 3, there's only a Quest 2. But I did hint at an AMA earlier this year about Quest Pro, because we do have a lot of things in development where we want to introduce new functionality to the headset. Here, let's put this one up. Here we go. We want to introduce new functionality to the headset. Let's see. Along the kinds that people theorize that we would want to introduce, and that's a little ways off still. It's still not going to happen this year. So no Quest Pro in 2021. For those who are curious, Quest 2 is going to be in market for a while, for a long while, and it's going to be, I think the best bet for the most accessible way to get into VR and have a great experience. So in just these few statements here, Facebook is telling you, don't wait on the Quest 2. It's going to be out there for a long time. It's not going to be replaced soon like the Quest 1 arguably was. And he's also telling us that if you want something with more features, it's not coming this year, more or less. The thing that we can have a fun part of this conversation is about, we want to introduce new functionality to the headset. We actually kind of already know what things they're thinking about, and those are from Mark Zuckerberg's mouth quite recently, where he's suggesting he wants face tracking. And there was even a comment elsewhere in this AMA where Bosworth may be pushing for a depth sensor on a Quest Pro. So right now, the hand tracking that we have on the Quest headsets are all optically tracked. using machine learning and figuring out what our hands are doing from these 4 monochrome cameras that are on the corners of the headsets. And you can't do things like this. I can't put my hands in front of each other. One hand disappears. But if you go and try a HoloLens, it'll be a little bit more robust. I think because it's got a depth sensor on there. So what we hopefully can do in a Quest Pro is do that sort of thing, where you put your hands in front of each other. And Mark Zuckerberg himself saying that he's really interested in eye tracking and face tracking. That's going to take these avatars to the next level, where I can actually make facial expressions in VR and have them broadcast over the internet to someone else, and they'll actually be my real facial expressions, not just a computer figuring out what they are.
Whew. Do you think, and correct me if you don't think this is true, but do you think this whole thing about, he mentioned the Quest Pro and now he's saying don't expect that or don't expect a Quest 3. Do you think a decision between that first comment and this stuff here, do you think like a backpedal occurred, or was it never planned in the first place? It was just, as he said, an interesting idea.
In another part of this Q&A session between Carmack and Bosworth, they more or less suggest a couple things. That Carmack thinks they just need to make a more comfortable version of Quest 2, that the next headset just refine everything that they're doing with Quest 2, do it a lot better, bring down the weight, make it more comfortable, just do everything you're already doing, but better. And the back and forth is more or less suggesting that Bosworth is pushing for something quite a bit more with the next headset, this Quest Pro, this mythical Quest Pro, that we're probably going to be due for probably sometime next year, I would bet. I mean, maybe that's being too aggressive with it, but I imagine that they won't want to escape 2022 without introducing this headset. I would be really surprised if we get to April of next year and he says, Quest Pro is still a ways off. It's not going to happen in 2022. So the question is whether, how do you build on everything that the original Quest does or the Quest 2 does and make it even better? And these are the types of things that would add quite a bit to the experience. If the hand tracking gets considerably better than what you've got with the Quest 2, if the avatar connection, working from home stuff where, we could have a discussion, a very intense discussion as 2 coworkers looking at a document together, and I kind of go, and I make this certain expression that you would recognize or that would come across to you.
Mm-hmm.
But this avatar system, the ability of the current headsets to pick up that expression is just moot. It's not there. And obviously there's the facial tracker that you can attach to headsets from HTC that is sort of moving in that direction. But again, that's not going to be the same as if this stuff was integrated into the headset itself. So the Quest Pro could very much be their headset where you need to get work done in VR, and they're actually going to push for it in a really significant way. But back to your question of whether they backed off or changed their plans. There's a chip shortage. That's another part of that we're going to get into that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's hard for us to tell whether how their product plans are affected by this chip shortage. I think from a I don't think there's a faster chip than the XR2 right now that they can really go use off the shelf. And so that's they're kind of like sitting with the best that they can right now, and that's why it's going to be in market for such a long time.
At least they didn't say, well, there's no plans for an XR3, but an XR Pro is possibly next year.
So Qualcomm did say that if they do an XR2, or the next chip that we can expect from Qualcomm might be like an XR2 Rev 2. Qualcomm specified that XR1 and XR2 are classes of products out of Qualcomm, and XR3 would be like another class of product out of them, and they're more or less arguing that that's not the way their naming scheme is going to work.
Sure, and Rev 2, I support that naming convention fully. I do. So that's awesome. Anything else with the Carmack Bosworth convo?
Oh, Onakazi, so Boz is finding out that he can't be anything but a press release when trying to interface with the public because every offhand comment or look or breath will be taken apart. Yeah, I mean, I think it's also by design on his part. I mean, he goes on Instagram AMAs and he chose to do this Spaces conversation with a co-host on the Spaces AMA in John Carmack. So he knows what he's saying, and he's learning, I guess, on the fly who's going to misrepresent uh, their statements and who's actually going to dig in and really provide an accurate portrayal of the things he says. He knew what he was doing when he winked at the camera and said Quest Pro in response to a Quest 3, and people still kind of like went off the deep end thinking that he's confirming a Quest 3 when he literally calls the product by its name that he probably envisions it becoming.
I want to point out Gerald just said during the next AMA, I'll ask if he regularly reads Upload VR. You do that, Gerald. I'll be looking forward to that answer.
Yep.
So what else, Ian?
All right. Well, I've got 6 pages of quotes here that I've transcribed from this interview so far, and there's still maybe like 30 minutes of this thing to get into. And these are the ones that I put up here on the screen are the ones that are sort of first on the list of things to discuss. I'm still digging in and need to get through the rest of the stuff because there was so much information in here, them going back and forth, that it's really useful. They talked about Airlink at another portion of this, so we have to get back to Airlink and talk about what they were saying. Originally, they are discussing and have been discussing the idea of a little dongle that you attach to your PC and can manage the wireless connection between your Quest headset and the PC. And the discussion was they basically have arrived at this place where they think they can provide a good enough virtual desktop has been a big part. That Carmack specifically comes out and says maybe to put that debate to bed, because a lot of people are sort of like, we saw it in our comments, people responding to Guy's quote where he was expressing he's talking about Facebook copying features, and when you read the way Carmack puts it here, it makes a lot more sense for the way Facebook viewed this feature and the necessity to include it as a built-in feature. Carmack's saying, I always pointed to the virtual desktop work where we have an existence proof. I kept saying literally, right this very second, there are thousands of people using that and getting value from it. Clearly, it's okay. So this is, again, one of those things. The right thing happened in the end. It's all good. We're not requiring it. So they said they basically were going back and forth on whether they needed to have this dongle to to ensure that you have a good enough experience. And kind of virtual desktop, it's almost sounding like virtual desktop kind of proved them. The people using virtual desktop proved to them that the experience was good enough for them to do it themselves, is the way I'm reading this. So the end of this quote, if we get lots of people using this and it looks like there's a market for it to do some higher end boutique dongle that improves performance a bit. So there's the indication there that maybe they'll do a dongle if they think that there's a market for it. But right now, they're in this place where how many people are going to use these headsets in a completely standalone mode and never use the PC? Is it going to diminish year after year? And the people that actually want to use the PC, are they okay with the current Wi-Fi experience? They don't actually need to go. And there's Bosworth, I think, says this in his quote where he essentially says, Most of the people who have the high-end PCs probably also have the high-end Wi-Fi, so they don't actually need to ensure they have this great experience. So it's kind of like the overlap between these two groups of people who need a dongle and people who use PC VR are like not the same groups.
I'm reminded of the HTC wireless solution with that WiGig card that I stuck in my computer with that antenna that sat on my desk and needed line of sight and all of that. I'm not really sure how many people did that, wanted to do that, felt the need for it. I don't know. I know that my own personal wireless streaming experience through virtual desktop, I've never tried to break it. I've always just used it for what it's capable of doing. So, the idea of having another piece of hardware, it's something else that it's got overhead. It needs, it requires another factory to produce another piece of hardware, which packaging and shipping and all that nonsense. Software update is much simpler way. And if it provides just enough to get you where you need to be, because I feel like Carmack is a big fan of that. I feel like he's a big fan of it's just enough to get you where you need to be. And good enough is good enough for him in a lot of cases. I don't know. That's just my perspective.
If you, I need to go through, like, I'm still digesting it and see what he said, but well, let me get into this last quote from him on the metaverse. He has this amazing comment about the metaverse. And I think a lot of different companies come to mind when I read this comment. So Bosworth brought up this comment, says, do I think native apps will become the metaverse or the web or some combination? So Carmack gets into the metaverse in response to this question brought up by Bosworth. And Carmack's comment is, quote, this is actually something where for the first 5 years at Oculus, I really fought to keep us from attempting to do the metaverse because I just expected it to be a disaster. I expected it to be a honeypot trap for architecture astronauts. Oh, it's something I've never heard that sentence before, and it sounds so mean. Even though it's just a description, I expected it to be a honeypot trap for architecture astronauts. Everybody wants to design the metaverse as this infinitely flexible thing, and those discussions just always wind up being pretty far divorced from sort of on the ground user value that I'm always on about. So that's I think going full circle with what you're saying. Carmack is looking for on the ground user value that I'm always on about. When people want to design a system flexible enough to do anything, then it's not doing any particular thing particularly well. And I've always thought that systems like Fortnite is in many ways closer to the metaverse than anything we have in VR. Fortnite, Minecraft, Roblox, these things are set out to be games, and they built things that people love. So I have a bit of an issue with kind of even considering naming things as an attempt at the metaverse is usually a waving red flag for me. I think it usually signals that people aren't concentrating on the right thing. I don't want it as a strategic goal, really. I think of Magic Leap. I can't help but hear Magic Leap brought up throughout that entire quote. I think of, if you want to point to a paragraph or a paragraph and a half that kind of describes the difference between Magic Leap and Facebook, I think you're going to find it right there in what Carmack just said.
I was in a very deep conversation with someone and online recently, and I said something very profound, and I screenshotted it so I could repeat it on the show today. And you just gave me the perfect segue to it. In terms of the metaverse, stop trying to make the metaverse happen. Just let it happen. It will happen naturally. That's the easiest and best way to end up with a metaverse is to stop trying to make it happen. Just let it happen. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. I think every time you say, oh, this is the new metaverse. Oh, this is the new life. Oh, this is Second Life. Oh, wait, no, Second Life is a product. Stop trying to make it happen. Just let it happen.
And people are kind of going off on the copying thing that Facebook does, and I don't. Facebook sees, it's what competitors do. You see something that your users want, you build it for them, or you buy it, and that's what Facebook does. And it's really tough that what that means is anytime Facebook builds something, they're going to they're going to take from an idea that maybe already exists, and they're going to build it on their own system and make that other thing less appealing to people. Like it's not like the people bring up the Oculus Move service that existed before Oculus Move. Who wants to give their credentials away? I always have this issue with, it's a really complicated situation with these headsets where Guy was brought up in this conversation with Bosworth in another area where if the pass-through API was, if pass-through was somehow given to all developers could do some really great things with it. And Virtual Desktop is one of those examples where he could really get access to it. And at some point in this conversation, Bosworth points out that he DM'd Guy and told him, yeah, that's pretty much coming. You don't have to kind of ask for it any longer. We're going to get on top of it and get you this API. And so when I see these conversations about people sort of fighting about Facebook copying things, Facebook is providing things their users want, and they're using data to drive the construction of that. It is a really unfortunate situation for things like big screen, where sooner or later, I as a user want to sit with my friends and watch a movie, even if we aren't in the same state. Like, I want to sit down and watch a movie together, and that means that big screen sooner or later is going to be competing with what Facebook is doing. And does that mean that Facebook copied them and killed them on purpose? Well, it gets in this really tricky area where it's like, it's hard for me. Like, I can't take sides. I'm right in the middle of this, where it's like, in lots of situations, Facebook more or less comes to these developers and says, we got to acquire you, or we got to duplicate what you're doing, or we're already duplicating what you're doing. Come help us, speed us up. And it's like, that's incredibly disheartening if you've been at this for many, many years, and now your thing is just getting duplicated by the big developer in the room, the person who's throwing out billions of dollars. So it's this, the comment from Guy that we published on our site is kind of pointing out that this is going to keep happening again and again and again, where if you have a popular app on Facebook's platform, Facebook is looking at that data too. And as soon as they see the popular app on their platform, they're going to go, should we be doing that ourselves?
I mean, it is still a true statement to make that imitation is the highest form, imitation is the highest form of flattery. If you're doing something good and people are copying you, but you still have to maintain your value, and that's kind of where the rub is right now, is how does the original maintain its value? I mean, if you look through all the times where the original doesn't exist anymore, but the imitator actually takes over. I mean, look at what's happening with cryptocurrency right now. Everybody was high on Bitcoin, and now Dogecoin. Dogecoin is where it's at.
Cryptocurrency. We don't talk about cryptocurrency on the VR podcast. No.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay.
Pay me some Bitcoin right here, and I'll talk about Bitcoin. No.
Yeah. Here. I'm gonna make it rain. Dogecoin for everybody. Here it is.
No. Well, let's point out Spatial and Microsoft Mesh, right? Like, that's a very similar thing, where Spatial is the overlap between Spatial and Microsoft Mesh is very similar. And I can't even think of the dead company that died a few years ago when Facebook or when Microsoft rolled out its own like Office solutions or showed that they were going to do a mixed reality version of their operating system, there was a startup out there that was trying to extend Microsoft Windows into mixed reality. And as soon as Microsoft announced its own solution, that company just shut down and handed the money back to the investors, said, no, we're done. And it's kind of like what those situations are. If you're dealing with someone who has a platform, you got to be careful.
Yeah, it happens. You can't even remember the name of the original company. That's unfortunate. It
Yeah.
really is. Yeah. So I don't know. Have we exhausted this conversation?
Yeah, we're done. We're done.
Are we
Well,
done?
I mean, it seems like the people in the
good.
comments, it activated slow mode in the comments. That's how many people are going off on this right now. That's the first time I've seen.
How it is? All right. Well, let's dig into another piece that we kind of touched on earlier. NVIDIA. NVIDIA expects GPU shortage to last much of this year being 2021, if you're watching this 5 years from now. NVIDIA told investors they expect supplies to fall short of demand for much of this year. That could have an impact on the decision to bring out another headset. It could redirect. I heard, was it Intel is making chips for cars to kind of supplement that little dip here where they can't get chips. You can't anticipate what the market is going to want. And going into a following year, suddenly GPUs are scarce. Also, probably because of cryptocurrency mining. I'm just going to throw it out there one more time. What are we going to do about this, Ian? I mean, do we have how many comments can we possibly make about a shortage?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I got interested in Bitcoin just from the just from the direction of gambling. Right? It's a nice way to gamble at home without having to go to a casino. And that's the extent of my interest in cryptocurrencies. And I hope all our VR lovers out there are standing with me and just laughing at the Bitcoin craze. Uh, it's kind of a bummer that we're like in year 5, almost it seems, of cryptocurrencies making it hard to get high-end graphics cards for your machines because they're being used for other purposes. So yeah, it's shortage is going to continue. When is it going to end? And that was another comment that was mentioned in the Bosworth AMA, and where they're doing a lot of things internally, I guess, to try to ensure that there are Quest 2s on shelves for people to pick up throughout this year. It's one of these things where if they can't make enough chips, the people who pay the most, that being Apple and companies of that size, are the ones who get first dibs for the remaining supply. And Facebook is in this position where they're trying to play on Apple's level. So a company like Valve that's making the index, are they able to get the supply they need to keep index from going out of stock all the time? I don't know. And can they make an index 2 or a wireless dongle for the index? Those are the things that kind of like come into play when the chips become hard to come by.
This really focuses on those of you who are scrambling to try to get the best PC VR experience. I mean, obviously, having a better graphics card will allow AirLink to be better. Having a better graphics card will allow, if you have the link cable, to do better. But for those of you who are purely mobile VR gaming, or using just the Quest 2 as a standalone item, you don't care about this. You just this isn't really important to you unless you have a reason to get one of these. This really isn't new. I was kind of questioning. I was like, is this really news for something like mobile? But then again, there's so many people still doing PC VR that, and with AirLink available and things like that, this is going to definitely help your upgrades.
I mean, it's not just the NVIDIA chips that are experiencing the shortage. I mean, it's across the board becoming an issue for all silicon, and
Mm-hmm.
I would really need to dig into it to understand why. I still don't understand it myself, why this issue is exactly happening. But that's why it's kind of such an issue that, like, at the moment the Quest 2s themselves become hard to come by on the store shelves, uh, that is when people start noticing again. And I guess Facebook is making some real moves here to uh, make sure that that doesn't happen in 2021 after the pandemic of 2020.
Yeah. So I don't know. Let's see what else we have in the news here. Then let's move on. Our last piece of news today is it looks like HTC is teasing a new VR headset this time. HTC teased another image to its Twitter account, along with the suggestion that a VR headset geared toward the enterprise market is on the way. I saw that quote. It said, now that the something to the effect of now that the accessories are out of the way, let's get down to business. So that word, the choice to use the word business really hammers home that enterprise target audience. Am I reading that correctly?
Yeah, but the thing is, it's a question of whether HTC can actually target anything but business outside of China right now. Uh, y- like there's a lot of people that fell in love with the original Vive for very good reason. It was, I have very distinct memory of being at Weaver. What were they called back then? Wemo. What was their name before
I
Weaver?
can never remember.
Um, One Weaver or something. Yeah. Anyways, I remember being at their studio near the Venice, and they had one of the original five pre's set up, and I watched another person go up to a wall and stop just short of the wall and back up just a little bit, and they came this close to colliding with the wall before the chaperone stopped them and told them that they were about to hit it. And two hand controllers, obviously, being able to experience your hands for the first time. They shipped that. Valve and HTC came together, shipped that in April of 2016. And it took Facebook until December of that year to get the touch out to people. And so
Mm-hmm.
people were buying gamepad games for a good 6 months, where there's things like Job Simulator, H3 VR, all these really fantastic contraption, all these just incredible room scale experiences that, like, anyone who tried it went, yeah, this is what I want. This is what I really, really wanted out of VR. I wanted to be able to reach out and grab things and toss them and have this experience. And Vive did that. And I can't blame anyone that 5 years later, you're still running on that original Vive system, loving it every moment that you're using it, hoping that HTC is able to have a trick up its sleeve. But the reality of the situation is that uh, they've been pummeled for 5 years by Facebook. You can look on, we talk about it every week on this show, the Pac-Man effect of how much Facebook is eating of the share on Steam. And
Mm-hmm.
then you combine that with the fact that Valve itself brought up the index and kind of like indexed the market away from HTC. And you've got this situation where there's just not much of a slice left for HTC to compete. The slice where they can compete is in China, where Facebook doesn't operate.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it's kind of like returning to their home base and these Asian countries where uh, Western devices won't penetrate as much, or decide not to penetrate. But yeah, here's the chart that shows just 6 months, within less than 6 months, Quest 2, Rift S, Rift, Quest, and then you've got all these other HTC headsets. But here's this original 2016 headset that stopped selling in 2019, uh, still being the highest performing HTC headset over the 20, that the newest version is only 1%. And so, like, it's just the situation where or Facebook is coming out and telling us all the new features that you want out of an Oculus Facebook headset, the face tracking, the eye tracking, potentially better hand tracking. We can't get that out to you this year. We can't do it well enough this year. You're going to have to wait until at least next year before we can put those in a really impressive way into a headset. Now, of course, there's the Vive Pro Eye. So there is a HTC Vive Pro version that has eye tracking. There are headsets out there with eye tracking. There's the Pico Neo with eye tracking. It's just these things need to be done at those extra features need to be done at such an incredible high level of quality that it works on everyone. It's got incredible resources thrown into the software, and it's hard for me to believe that HTC is going to compete. There's the way that the places they compete are the places where Facebook isn't wanted or doesn't want to go.
Yeah, I don't know. I remember when seeing the Vive still way up here on the list. It's actually, that doesn't surprise me, because when the Vive, like when the pre came out, it was like you'd go to a show and it's like you get a pre and you get a pre and you get a pre and you get a pre. They were just dumping them out to developers everywhere, just trying to build an ecosystem. And what they've done with that since then has brought us these things. And I guess in some ways the index kind of,
what wouldn't show up on this
that
chart is their focus, right? That focus isn't going to be on this chart. Their Vive Focus.
Well, right.
But what we're seeing with Vive Focus and even the Pico Neo 3 that's coming is iterations on what Facebook is doing or what Qualcomm is doing. Qualcomm is putting out these reference designs for other manufacturers to use. And we see it in our comments, and those comments seem like they're probably spot on. That, like, I just don't think when you think about the billions of dollars that Facebook is throwing to improve the software. That's another comment in the quotes that Bosworth put out there. They're calling it the year of software at Facebook. It's literally, like, if they can't put out new hardware for us to put on our heads this year, they're going to month after month after month improve the software experience on a Quest. So back at launch, you couldn't, since launch, they've added wired PCVR, then wireless PCVR, then hand tracking, then couch detection, desk detection, objects in your room, just this endless list of things. And they aren't even halfway through 2021 with these monthly software updates. And you've got HTC trying to compete against that. It's like it's bringing a knife to a gunfight when you've when you've got the software money being thrown at it by Facebook.
Yeah, the focus. I've always felt that the focus. It's one that I don't have in my collection, and I'm a little sad that I don't, because I always felt like it was a comfortable. It is a comfortable headset, and the numerous times I've used one, but I don't have one in my collection. I might have to track one down. Get it? Tracking. All right. I see some comments in here. People were talking about our face tracking and whether or not we're using facial expressions and stuff. No, Ian and I are very cold-faced people until we laugh. And then the avatar picks it up. But this is just our regular avatar, and then whatever voodoo magic that Heaney has put on it. Let's see what other comments are going on in here. Did you see anything else, Ian, that we would want to address?
Yeah, people are.
By the way, hi, Guy. I see that you're in the comments talking now. Hello, Guy.
Yeah, I saw people asking about the Hey Facebook feature. Yeah, and he's responding, explaining that lots of features hit the US first. I think there's extra hoops to run through in getting privacy features that can potentially cause privacy concerns. Getting those up and running in the EU district of the world can be a little bit harder for lots of those features. Someone is saying that the V28 is downloading right now. Yeah, I'm gonna get out of here and find V28 is waiting there for me, aren't I? Yeah,
lucky.
Nice.
Yeah. Oh wow. All right. Okay. Well, then, hey, maybe that is what we should do. We should wrap up this episode, and everybody can go out and take a look at V28, and everybody can go out and compare their link to their virtual desktop and see which one they like and see what other fun features there are. Are we expecting any level of updates on, like, I didn't look at the whole release notes, or were there like
There was a
improvements to
mention
tracking and
somewhere in
stuff?
there. Yeah, I want to say thank you to. I wish I could remember the name of the person, but it was really frustrating the way this V28 downloaded, or the way the V28 news broke. We actually got a tip. We saw it. We saw it hit on Twitter, and then we reached out on Facebook because there was a Reddit post that kind of someone was chatting with Facebook customer service, and they wanted to find out, I think it was either 120 hertz mode, I think it was maybe 120 hertz mode. They were like, when is 120 hertz mode going to hit? I really want that on my headset. And the customer service person at Facebook pasted the entire release notes for the V28 into the chat log with this person before it had actually been formally announced by Facebook. So I'm looking at these release notes going, wow, that's someone had to go to some quite the extent to lie about these release notes. These look pretty legitimate. Let me go to Facebook and say, are these legitimate release notes? And I'm writing up my article. And right in the middle of writing up my article to verify whether these release notes are real, I get the email back from Facebook. Oh, here's the link to our blog post where we have just announced AirLink and Infinite Office and all these different things. So there was, there was a Redditor out there doing very good service to the community in needling customer service for that information moments before it hit the wider web.
And I just want to say, yes, thank you to you, the Redditor, who supplied that, but also thank you to the help person employed by Facebook, and the one who had to get off the chat and hurry up and run over and go, post the blog, I just let it out, post it, because nobody wants a leak. That's no fun. I mean, for us it is, but all right, well, as usual, I want to recommend that everybody go and check out uploadvr.com for all your latest news, reviews, comments, and interviews. Also, check out our YouTube channel. And if you're more of a podcast type of person, go get our podcast VR download from whatever your respective podcast platform may be. I also want to thank Heaney for all the lovely updates and everything. Every time I come into this studio, I feel like it's a little bit better. I'm curious, Ian, are we going to get 120 hertz support for the virtual studio, the Upload Virtual Studio?
I think Heaney can do it. He's got to get the download like the rest of us, but I think he can.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm looking forward to that. We'll have to keep everybody posted. So to everybody in Chatland, thank you for participating. I really appreciate it. Like and subscribe and all that normal YouTuber influencer type of nonsense. And follow us on Twitter and Facebook and all those other things. And happy Doge Day tomorrow, April 20th, to all of you cryptocurrency freaks out there. And I guess that's it. All right. Thank you all very much for watching or listening. We'll see you in the future. Bye-bye.